This is apropos. Well, they may have divergent interests, but experts say they're united against a common enemy. After carrying out a series of brazen attacks across Mali at the weekend, Al-Qaeda-linked jihadists and separatist rebels are in control of the key northern town of Kidal. Insurgents say they've also forced an army unit stationed in Tessit to surrender. The scale and scope of the offensive demonstrates an unprecedented ability to coordinate fighters from different groups with different goals and strike at the heart of the junta while forcing Russian troops to retreat. With more on the reaction within Mali, here's Emily Boyle.
The streets of Bamako are busy as usual, but a veil of uncertainty sits over the Malian capital after a weekend of coordinated attacks across the country perpetrated by separatist fighters and Islamist militants.
We condemn this aggression against the state. We have always condemned it and we continue to do so. We are used to it, but these latest attacks were very violent. We tell the attackers that the Malian people remain unshakable.
Schools and businesses were operating normally on Monday, and several military checkpoints which had been erected over the weekend had been removed. Most of the local press mourned the killing of the Minister of Defense, Sadio Kamara.
I really couldn't sleep last night. The fact that Sadio Kamara, as Minister of Defense, and his family have fallen victim to this kind of attack really surprises me. When I think of us civilians who rely on them, it's very hard to comprehend.
Although Bamako residents were more concerned than they were afraid, fear seems to be stronger among the Malian community abroad, like here in Senegal.
It's a difficult situation. I have family there. I am very scared because we don't know what is happening and we don't know how this will end.
We all have parents there, brothers, sisters, mothers, so we'd like the government to be vigilant, to have surveillance and be ready for anything, because we're worried.
The situation in Mali is still uncertain. Any violence could exacerbate an already vulnerable humanitarian situation.
For more, let's bring in Nathaniel Powell, Africa Analyst at Oxford Analytica and Research Associate at Lancaster University Centre for War and Diplomacy. Nathaniel, thanks so much for being with us on the programme. You're a specialist in the area of French military interventions in Africa, the Sahel region in general. How serious do you think this is for the junta in Mali and by extension Russia? How much of a setback have the events of this weekend been for the Kremlin?
Well, in terms of the junta, it's clearly emerging from this in a weakened state. There's no ambiguity about that. Sadio Kamara's death was also accompanied by the wounding or serious wounding of Modibo Kone, who's one of the other junta members. And Assimi Goïta, the leader of the junta, his location unknown, has not made any public statements. So we're talking about a junta that is essentially not governing, or at least raising questions about who in fact is ruling Mali at the moment. And that raises questions about whether there could be a coup or a reorganization of the junta in the coming days or weeks. We may, if they're completely consolidate their authority or reconsolidate their authority, then you may see increasing stress on the military and an increased jihadist pressure that they're unable to resist, and that is certainly a worrying prospect. But I would say that the JNIM, which is the main jihadist group that was involved in the attacks, does not yet appear to have the capability to seize and hold an urban area for any length of time. So Bamako is not yet under threat of being captured, but the longer-term prospects certainly do not look good.
And Nathaniel, what do you make of the fact that jihadists have been coordinating so closely with rebels? You say that this is perhaps aimed at driving a wedge between the junta and Moscow.
Yeah, so the rebels have different goals, right? So the FLA, which is the separatists in north, they want an independent state, and Kidal is sort of the symbolic capital of northern Mali, and recapturing that, which from the Russians and from the junta, from the government, is a major symbolic victory for them. So in that sense, they share a goal with the jihadists in the sense that the junta is their enemy, the Russians are their enemy. Longer term, whether that alliance can hold up is another question, because the jihadists and the separatists have very different end goals in mind. Jihadists want to establish a religious government over the entire region, and the separatists want an independent state and would probably not appreciate that being imposed on them. But in the short, medium term, they share a common enemy and common goals. And vis-a-vis the Russians, certainly both have an incentive to try to encourage splits between the junta and the Russians. And what we've seen in the past couple of days is essentially a Russian flight from the north. Negotiated exits of Russian forces, accompanied. There's mixed sources say that they're accompanied by Malian forces. Others say that they're not accompanied by Malian forces. So it's very unclear at the moment. But in any case, it seems to be the case that Russians are leaving. They've left Kidal. They may have left Anafis. They may have left Tassit. And maybe some other locations in exchange for safe conduct. That is, that they're not going to be attacked by the FLA, although some may have been attacked by Islamic State in the process, who are not part of this alliance. And yeah, the idea there is obviously to create, first of all, get rid of the Russians, but second of all, to create distrust between Moscow and the junta. It's unclear how successful they've been. We don't really know. There's not enough information yet. There's lots of stuff flying around social media, but it's very hard to get a sense of what's actually happening, what's not.
And how much planning and logistical support do you think this involved, and who's been funding this alliance?
The funding is essentially self-funding from taxes that JNIM and the FLA are able to extract from their own populations. The JNIM has also reportedly garnered a large amount of money through ransoms, especially apparently a $50 million ransom paid by the Emirates to free one of their citizens recently. So that certainly could have played a role. Logistical challenges in organizing this would have been immense. To organize coordinated attacks on at least 6 different urban centers simultaneously across the country over an area spanning over 1,000 kilometers, that takes an enormous degree of coordination and logistical kind of orchestration. And that's something that we've seen this at a lower scale before, but not at this scale. So that is truly unprecedented, and that itself represents a strategic victory in the sense that this furthers their narrative that they have the momentum against the junta. The junta's on the back foot, that their victory is inevitable. And I think just the propaganda around this and the narrative around this is going to benefit the jihadists, regardless of what the government's able to do. And the fact the government is half decapitated and it has not offered much of a response rhetorically is going to hurt them even further.
And how weakened are governments, do you think, across the Sahel region by this, if indeed they are? Burkina Faso and Niger, they're also fighting interlinked insurgencies. So the Nigerian junta appears to be in a bit better shape. I mean, it's true that the Islamic State Sahel and JNIM are increasing the intensity of their attacks in western Niger, and Niger also faces the remnants of Boko Haram in the southeastern part of the country. But most of the country is largely spared from the insurgency. Burkina Faso, on the other hand, is under serious pressure as well. Just recently, they had a major attack on a military base that killed a large number of soldiers. Before this offensive in Mali, the conventional wisdom was that JNIM had reduced its activity in Mali to focus more on Burkina Faso because there has been an uptick of attacks in Burkina Faso. Now we think that the reason why there was a reduction in JNIM activity in Mali was in preparation for this offensive. But the junta in Burkina Faso has just announced a mobilization of 100,000 citizens to join the reserves. Partly this is rhetorical, but partly it's a recognition that this is a very difficult conflict that the military itself has been unable to contain. And unfortunately, I think all 3 juntas are privileging a military first option as the only way to counter these jihadist advances. And at the end of the day, the way they're prosecuting these wars have been counterproductive, involving lots of civilian casualties, which fuels jihadist recruitment and ultimately boosts their enemy. And that's
we've seen in Mali how this has turned out, and the situation is certainly deteriorating in all three countries. But Burkina Faso is certainly under serious pressure.
Nathaniel, we'll have to leave it there for now. Thank you so much for that insightful analysis. Nathaniel Powell, Africa Analyst at Oxford Analytica, thanks so much for your time on the programme.